I was amazed to discover that you didn't grow up in a musical household. In fact, you remember the first time you heard classical music quite clearly.
Yeah, well, it was when I had that one record with the Bliss March on one side and the Grieg March on the other.
Didn't you hear
But
something?
I
Have to cycle to your local record
Oh yeah, well, I had a bit of a nervous breakdown at sea, and when I was recovering, I just happened to hear on the radio something that sort of revived me from my lethargy of just gazing into space. And I cycled to the nearest record shop and said, "Do you have Tchaikovsky's B-flat minor piano concerto, played by Solomon and the Halle Orchestra?" And they said yes, and I took it, and it changed my life. You know, from then on, I realized that there was a fantastic drug called classical music, and so I never looked back, and I could never play a single note of a record without having visions. So, and that was even so with the Devils. And as I was writing the script, I played over and over Prokofiev's Third Symphony, which was based on his opera
Fiery Angel.
Fiery Angel, which was about possession in a convent. So, couldn't go wrong. I also played great chunks of the music when the nuns were freaking out in the cathedral, because that sort of got them going. It's not that easy to cavort about, in the Altogether, with a lot of extras watching and electricians and God knows what. But when you have a sort of manic sort of, it's not music. It goes beyond music. It becomes almost a living, solid thing you can lose yourself in. Then you can emote.
And you'd done that before on...
I did that
with Glenda Jackson.
With Glenda Jackson in, The Music Lovers, when she's freaking out on a wedding night in a railway carriage, rocking about on her way to Leningrad. She's an nymphomaniac, her husband's a homosexual, and I played Shostakovich, and that got her going. So music, well, they in silent days, we were told that, and we know it's true, that to get the actors to emote in a scene, they had a pianist and violinist generally, to create the right atmosphere, and still works.
And is it true that the first time you ever heard The Rite of Spring, you, and I quote, took off all your clothes and danced?
Shh! Don't, no! Speak among yourselves. Yeah, I stripped off in my mum's living room and leapt about. Didn't know anything about ballet. She came in and said, like cup of tea, Ken? Naked and unashamed. Well, I was ashamed, actually, but still.
And didn't you then have a short-lived career as a ballet dancer?
Oh, yeah, it wasn't that short. Well, so I was 5 years learning and 1 month dancing, yeah. And my first I danced before the crown head of Scandinavia, King Gustav III of Sweden.
Did he
committed suicide immediately? No, he didn't. That's a joke. Poor joke. Yeah. So, but it's all useful, you see. And I also went to photographic school, and it all comes in useful. So I know about choreography, and I can use a camera.
You also, even before you got to making feature films, you knew about controversy, because didn't one of your monitor films have questions asked in the Houses of Parliament?
Yes, I did a film on Richard Strauss that's still banned to this day from the BBC. It was shown once, and the Strauss family objected to me saying that Richard Strauss may have had Nazi tendencies. And so they banned it. Band-Aid.
And that's never been lifted, the ban?
No, it's still in existence today, because they wanted to show it in New York in a festival they had the other day, and BBC stopped it. But, You saw it where? At Mommy in Queens. Where? Mommy in Queens.
The Museum of the Moving Image at Queen's.
Oh, in America? Yeah, well, yeah. That wasn't from the BBC, that copy. It was from an obscure pirate in Czechoslovakia, who shall be nameless.
And before I show this, the second clip from Hell on Earth...
Hey, did you like it? Great, yes, it's great. Well, maybe it'll be... Maybe I'm unbiased. It's an unbiased opinion. Totally unbiased. No, it's really good.
And before I show the second clip from Hell on Earth, the thing I just...
But do they want to ask any questions?
Yeah, they're going to have plenty of time to ask questions. This is what I get paid to do, Ken.
Go.
I should tell the audience, incidentally, that the first time I ever interviewed Ken on stage was in Southampton about 10, 11 years ago, when I promised you for the first time that I would find the Rape of Christ sequence. And midway through the interview, Ken decided that he was bored with the questions and walked off. So I hope things are more thrilling today.
Well, it's up to you guys. We'll answer anything.
We're not there yet, Ken. We're going to get to the questions in a minute. Okay. Before I show the second clip from Hell on Earth, in terms of the controversy that surrounded the Devils, there was, which this clip, which I'm going to show, illustrates, there was the suggestion at one point that, that you had gone out of your way to be deliberately shocking. But as far as I understood it, what you were doing was trying to put on screen, literally, what you understood from the Huxley. So is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, the whole point was that the nuns were set up and they played along with it because they were suddenly famous and they suddenly didn't have to do all scrubbing floors. They could just take their clothes off and have a great time in the cathedral or the local church. And the whole point was that the authorities allowed that and encouraged it so that the minds of the inhabitants of the town would be taken off their precious walls and taken up with sexual frivolity. And Huxley makes this absolutely clear, that this was the whole setup. It was very clever because it worked. And so, I just put it in the movie. And
all the stuff with the smashing of the legs, the piercing of the tongue, stuff that people considered to be deliberately outrageous was...
That all, according to Huxley, who researched it for years, I mean, it was the most scholarly book. I can recommend it. According to, I got all the information from him.
And as far as what happens to the nuns during the exorcism is concerned, which again was cause of, of great concern, this is all factual.
You can read the book.
The other thing that you've told me in the past, and I wonder if we can talk about it again, is that you said discovering Catholicism was a key thing for you in your creative life. I wonder if you can tell the audience the story about how you first decided that you might wish to become a Catholic and how that then affected your...
Well, I don't know if they'll be that interested, but...
You interested?
Oh, I'll tell you that.
It's like pantomime season.
He's behind you. Well, I lived in a sort of decrepit house, in rooming house in Notting Hill Gate. Everyone had a little hutch room, and it was always freezing cold in this house. And there was a very vociferous tax collector called Norman Dewhurst who'd just been converted to Catholicism. And he was, I knew nothing about Catholicism, didn't know much about Church of England either. But he was very enthusiastic, and he really turned me on to the faith by saying that, that God was a sort of spaceman in the sky, and if I joined up, I could be a space cadet. And we had this amazing device where we could actually contact the great spaceman. And I said, well, what on earth is this? And he produced some wooden beads. And by telling these beads, you're in direct contact. And I thought, this is science. I didn't know Catholicism was really science fiction. So I thought, I want to be a space cadet. So I went to the Poor Clares, who were really great. So after talking to them for 6 months, my little 16-year-old novice who'd instructed me said, I think you're ready now. So you go up to the Catholic Church in Notting Hill Gate, and the priest is waiting for you. He is waiting. And so I went up, and the priest said, "Well, it's a big, I'm going to baptize you. It's a big, big step. Is there anything you'd like to say before the irrevocable moment arrives?" And I said, "Well, to tell you the honest truth, I don't always believe." And he said, "Join the club." So I did, and lived happily ever after. So when I came to do The Devils, I thought I knew a bit about, the background of it all.
But the effect of that, of joining the club, was that was really when your sort of filmmaking career began, because you said it was like a light switch.
Yeah, it was. From that minute, I couldn't do anything wrong. Everything sort of fell into my lap. So, thanks, space people.
Because when it came out, I mean, so many people were troubled by, the religious implications of The Devils. I think it needs to be made clear that you never intended it as a sacrilegious film. You intended it as a political attack on the marriage of church and state. Is that
That's
correct?
right. That's absolutely right. And it was condemned when it came out, but mostly by atheists, and the children of light who, had never seen the film. But the fact that it was taught by the leading Jesuit professor of film at Loyola University in Chicago, I think speaks for itself, and he's still teaching to this day. So he thought it was an okay film for Catholic filmmakers.
And of course, he was head of the Catholic Ratings Association as well,
absolutely.
And gave it his approval. And as far as through the rest of your work is concerned, without wishing to pursue this too far, how do you feel yourself now in relation to organised religion? Because, for example, I know your house, which has sort of religious iconography on the wall, although it has to be said, kitsch religious iconography.
What's wrong with kitsch? No, seriously, because you see, it's not that's my whole point. It's not what it looks like, it's what it represents. So kitsch is fine, because to a lot of people, it isn't kitsch. It's kitsch to me. I've got all sorts of sort of weird and wonderful things, as he knows. But it doesn't matter what it is. It's as long as you know what's behind the iconography.
And what do you consider to be behind it? I mean, do you still consider yourself to be Christian or what? Or
Oh, I don't like to think about it.